Memphis Grace is about a teenage girl who finds herself in a relationship with a boy who wants her to go further than what she feels comfortable. So the book is very much about that relationship and how she deals with that and the consequences of some of the things that happen to her, and also about her finding her tribe, who her good friends are and what a good friend looks like, and how to stay true to yourself and what you want in life. Actually, one of the characters in Memphis Grace has autism. So as I mentioned, I work with students who have disability in schools and have a real passion for students who have autism. I really love some of the different ways that autism presents in different students. And I really wanted to write a story that showed the positive side of students with autism and what they have to offer the world. And so it actually started with that character and then sort of morphed out from there. I have this thing where I love to write my novels really quickly. And so just in terms of being able to keep the whole story within my head, I like to try to get it out within a relatively short period of time. So Memphis Grace only took about 8 weeks to write. So in order for that to happen, there has to be an awful lot of pre-planning. So a lot of organising what was going to happen when, and who the characters were going to be, and how they were going to act and react to situations, and you know, what were going to be the key points that happened along the way. So so my writing process was very evolved over probably about 8 months. And then once I felt that I had the story fairly well set, then I sat down and wrote it. Sure. The Boy in the Hoodie actually started out as being for an even younger age group. So I usually recommend Boy in the Hoodie around 13 plus. But I originally intended it to be for more like 11 plus, because my middle daughter at the time I was just struggling to find novels that she would be into reading, but that didn't have the sexual content that, you know, books like Fault in Our Stars, which is just such a fantastic story. And, you know, but I didn't want her reading that because there was inappropriate scenes in it for her age. And so I set out to write a novel for her. But when I first gave it to my first round of beta readers and teenagers to read it, they said these characters read as much older readers, as much older characters. And so from there, I readapted it into a young adult novel. Well, of course, I hang around with teenagers a lot at school, you know, and a big part of my job is being able to have good relationships with the students that I'm working with. So I suppose you sort of have to keep up a bit with what they're talking about, what their interests are, and those sorts of things. And of course, I have children that age as well. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've stopped leading, being a leader at my local youth group. So, you know, that's a completely different environment to be hanging around with young people as well. So I got to see a different side of some of the kids that I work with at school, but also just, you know, teenagers in general, a bit more of a laid back, this is who I really am kind of environment. Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. You know, over the last few years, when I was writing Memphis Grace, I was working a lot with that age group around year 10 girls. And, you know, we did talk about the sorts of situations they were finding themselves in when they were going to parties and drinking and putting themselves perhaps in some bit more precarious situations. So maybe not exactly the same, but yeah, I'm sure that there are any girl who has done some dating can probably relate to what Grace went through in some sort of way. I think it's so important for teenagers to be reading in settings from where they are from, whether that is, you know, just somewhere else in Australia, or whether that is actually somewhere where they can, you know, walk down the same streets. It's just reading a novel when it's set within your own culture is just such a beautiful thing. And on top of that, then like you can just relate to it so much better. You know, so many great novels are set in the United States, but it's such a long way away, you know, and even though the US and our cultures are somewhat mixed, we're still such a unique culture here in Australia. And so to really be able to relate to the characters and their experiences and what they're going through, I think it's really important for people to get a love for reading, in settings where they live and work and breathe. So I mentioned earlier Fault in Our Stars. So John Green has been a more recent author who has inspired me. I love the way that he writes to teenagers. He is, you know, his novels are character driven and they're so real, and then they're funny and they're emotional. They're just really great stories. So, you know, I would love for one day for someone to say, "Oh, you write just like John Green." That'd be like what I aspire to. But otherwise, yeah. So C.S. Lewis and some of the novels that I read, particularly in my younger years, inspired me to, you know, want to be able to change the world with my writing. You know, to not just, I don't want to just write for the sake of writing. You know, I want my writing to be something that says something to someone and says something to someone's heart, for them to, you know, want to be a better person from reading the books that I write. Yeah, they're you know, both suicide and consent or coercion are difficult topics. And so I wanted to address the issues without being graphic, or, you know, for it to be triggers for someone who might have been through that situation. That was really important for it to not be something that was going to upset someone to the point where they couldn't read the novel anymore. So so that was difficult, and I worked a lot with my editor on that to get those scenes right. And I also tried to make it so that they were a bit more like with the suicide attempt. Well, you know, that was in the past. You know, we know that she survived. We know, you know, some of the details about that, and so therefore that, I hope, takes away some of the stigma or the fear that might be surrounding that sort of topic. It's one of the things, you know, if someone does take their own life, is why, you know, what happened and what got them to that point of that. And so they ask the same questions in Memphis Grace. The girls don't know what happened to her that caused her to get to the point where that was, she felt that was her only option. So, you know, fortunately, it was just a story, but, you know, even in real life, it does, yeah, that's what people want to know, is how did it get to that point? And we got to explore that a little bit because Michaela survived it. I wasn't really, but I suppose in a way I was, but I hadn't actually put those words to it. So I was very much thinking about the fact that, you know, her friends were, and you know, Cooper as well, was very much, this is about, you know, this is who we think you should be, and we think that this is who the best version of you can be, and trying to get her to become something that she actually didn't want to be, if that makes sense. So yeah, I suppose, yeah, that is a form of you know, someone trying to manipulate you into doing something that you don't want to do. Yeah, I suppose a bit on my own life. You know, I write characters. I suppose my main characters, there's often an element of myself in there, and particularly as a teenager, and not being very sure of myself, and not feeling very confident in who I was, but at the same time sort of having ideas of who I thought I should be, and the way I should be living my life, and that sort of thing. And I was a terrible flirt, and did get myself into trouble a couple of times with different boys, and I had some regretful moments because of that. So I just really wanted to try to encourage other people to be more sure of who they were and what they wanted to be. There was one boy that I dated when I was, I think I was 17, and he had slept with his previous girlfriend, and he told me this, and I remember going through that whole, but hang on, I don't sleep with people before I'm married, and so how do I reconcile this? Because is that what he's going to expect of me? And how is this relationship going to work with that kind of history in our background? So yeah. So I suppose I applied a little bit of that to Cooper, and actually putting those expectations onto the girls in his life. So my passion for students with autism began when I started doing some teacher aiding after my youngest daughter started school. I took a job as a teacher aide because I wasn't quite ready to go back into teaching just yet. And prior to that, I hadn't had a lot of experience working with children with autism, but they just are so quirky, and they can just be so passionate about things, and just the way their brains work. They're just such amazing people, and yes, they can struggle a little bit socially, but once you get past some of that, and get to know them and get to understand them, and see past those sort of quirks, then they've just got so much to offer the world, but also other people, other teenagers, and so so I suppose that was a really big part of writing that character into Memphis Grace, was that I wanted to inspire teenagers to look past the disability and to get to know the person behind, who is really just wanting to be like everyone else. They're just wanting to be accepted, and to be friends with other people, and to be accepted by the world around them for who they are, without having to change, which ultimately is what we all sort of want. I think just to keep the characters really real, and don't be afraid to talk about real topics and have real conversations with those characters amongst themselves, and to make sure that you sort of know somewhat about the lives of those characters. So in writing Memphis Grace, I was hanging around with a lot of autistic students, and I kind of had a couple in mind when I was writing the character. So I think that he's a very real character, because he's very similar and has very similar experiences to some of the things that I experienced and watched my students going through at school. So I suppose that's probably the main thing, is to keep it real and to keep it honest.